Here's how to shut off anxiety as easy as flipping a switch. You know, anxiety is one of those weird symptoms, because if you're having chronic anxiety symptoms, it's sort of tempting to think, maybe I have some kind of micronutrient deficiency, or maybe I have an issue with my thinking and so I try some cognitive behavioral therapy or journaling. Or is it something really physiological and chemical, or is it something all of the above? Now in this video, I want to share some of the main origins of anxiety, how we view it in traditional Chinese medicine, and some simple strategies that can help you today. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Alex Heyne, board licensed doctor of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, and author of the health book Master the Day. So let's jump in. You know, anxiety is something that I unfortunately know intimately well, as someone who has chronically pushed himself too hard and apparently hasn't learned his lesson once, twice, 5 times, 25 times. Like a lot of driven professionals, constantly pushing myself for that next level has produced significant real anxiety symptoms. You know, we're talking clinical anxiety symptoms, not just feeling a little bit on edge, not just feeling a bit anxious, but such severe anxiety you can't sleep for days or even well for weeks. I'll never forget, when I was initially experiencing these symptoms, I was wondering, you know, do I have some kind of nutrient deficiency? If you go into a medical book, you can see, well, you know, magnesium is potentially correlated with anxiety. Then you'll go to other medical books that will say, oh, you know, it's just a physiological problem, just like people with depression. There's just a chemical imbalance, and it's serotonin, and it's dopamine, and it's the adrenal stress hormones. And then you can go to all other kinds of branches of medicine or study, or God forbid, Googling, who will say it's your nervous system, who will say it's your past life trauma, who will say it's all kinds of things. But one thing I can tell you for sure, if you have chronic anxiety symptoms, you probably have a dysregulated nervous system. And this is probably the most important thing to keep in mind from this video, because sure, you may have a magnesium deficiency. Lots of people do. But just taking magnesium on its own isn't necessarily enough to fix a lot of the really serious cases of clinical anxiety. But what does flip that switch, what does turn the needle, is focusing on healing your nervous system. Perhaps the best way to talk about anxiety is to talk about depression, because these two are juxtaposed adjacent to each other. Whereas anxiety is the chronic overactivation of the nervous system, really, where you have a hypervigilant response to everything. These kinds of responses are from a hypervigilant nervous system that is perpetually in a state of fight or flight. And so the nervous system is trying to constantly look for threats in the environment in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. when you're just randomly walking across the road and you hear a loud noise. And so it manifests an overreactive sort of response. And so clinically, you will see people respond with a hypervigilant response, both physically, like for example, people with heightened anxiety levels or heightened cortisol levels will actually have heightened muscular tension, most often in their neck and their jaw and the back of the trapezius muscles. And so not only do we see an overactivation of the nervous system, there's an overexpression of fight or flight, ready to go. That's that muscular tension, right? There's a deactivation of certain parts of your body, like the digestive system. Not as many enzymes are produced, changes in stomach acid. The bile flow in the gallbladder is compromised. For anxiety itself, our clinical strategy is, whether it is mainstream medicine or we're using acupuncture and traditional medicines, is that we want to basically shift the nervous system down a couple notches. How do you calm this overreactive quality of the whole system? We say that anxiety often relates to the heart and the kidney function in traditional Chinese medicine. And so in a way, we talked about juxtaposing this with depression, where with depression, we are seeing an underactivation of the system. Anxiety is where there are still resources in the system, right? So your body's mobilizing this energy, mobilizing these stress hormones, and you're seeing a heightened nervous system response, a fast heart rate, for example. And so while one is a more yang manifestation, a hyperactivity, an overreaction, this chaotic energy like this in the system, and you want to just help it calm down. Depression being the exact opposite. There's a deficiency of this pressure. There's a deficiency of the battery charge. Now, one of the best ways to unpack where the anxiety is coming from is to really figure out, how do I regulate my nervous system? Now, once a season, I do a one-time live workshop with a Q&A, and actually this fall and winter season, I'm focusing more on anxiety and nervous system regulation. So I'm launching a free live workshop. It's just called 5 Daily Practices from Traditional Chinese Medicine to Reduce Anxiety Levels and Regulate Your Nervous System and Adrenals. You guys can check the link below this video. I think we're limited to, 500 attendees live. That's how many we had last season. So make sure you register and get a spot. Again, it's a one-time thing. I just do it once per season, and I'll stick around for hours if you want and answer Q&A. So check it out down there below. It's really a bit of my own story, as well as really specifically, what are the rituals to do today if I'm having anxiety and I'm really just burnt out? Now let's talk about the somatic or body-focused view of anxiety. I think in the West, biomedical doctors do a very poor job of illustrating how many symptoms are somatic in nature. So for example, people will hear anxiety and depression, they're mental illness, but people forget there is no mind, there is no body. The mind literally is inside of your physical flesh bag of your body. My personal observation though with patients is that what is more helpful for anxiety is purely to focus on the somatic approaches to treating anxiety. What that means is you have certain practices like acupuncture, massage, physical movement. Exercise is the single thing I prescribe to patients that have a high level of anxiety day to day. Yoga, running, soccer, dance, salsa dancing. Physical movements and physical exercise is one of the best ways to decrease your cortisol and your stress levels and vent that sort of excess nervous system activity that's really stuck in the body. Acupuncture is one of the best somatic practices to take your nervous system activity down many notches. And when you look at the actual research on it, one thing researchers have found is that one of the main mechanisms of action whereby acupuncture can treat IBS, migraines, insomnia, depression, whatever it is because of the way it modulates and affects your nervous system. So it can decrease stress hormones, it can release endorphins, all kinds of very neat physiological effects that way. Now, some final thoughts here on this pattern. What I would recommend is to come up with strategies that help you in the chronic phase of anxiety. So let's say overall, you're not someone who sleeps very well, and you have a low or moderate level of anxiety on a day-to-day basis. I would recommend having a chronic strategy and having an acute strategy. So if you're someone who's going through these anxiety attacks and panic attacks, what I would really recommend is to find something for the acute when it is 10 out of 10, and the chronic when it is humming along, but if some life stressor comes, it's gonna be a 10 out of 10. In the chronic phase, this is where great somatic practices help. Regular acupuncture weekly, going to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, or yoga, or a brisk walk every day, your daily meditation practice, 20 minutes twice a day. But then when you get to the actual panic attack zone of anxiety, that's where you need more acute strategies. That may be acupuncturist, that may be seeing the TCM doctor and getting formulas when your anxiety is this high. It may be your biomedical doctor. Most of the time we say it relates to the heart and to the kidneys. Of course, most of the time people reference the heart or the chest when they're having anxiety. But those are some strategies day to day that can really help make a big difference. Before you guys go, I work with a limited number of new patients every week in my clinic in Los Angeles and online virtually via telemedicine. You guys can just go to dralexheyne.com/clinic and you can reach out to my clinic team there or book a visit. And there's also the information right below this video here, our phone number and the email to reach out and book a visit. And then before you go, I have another great video on the topic of anxiety right up here.